Good morning and welcome to the Company Culture 101 webinar today, which is brought to you by Don't Panic. My name is Kerstin Andlaw. I'm the founder of Thrive as One Consulting. We support businesses to create high-performing and thriving cultures. We are also joined today by Sharwin. She is Culture and Transformation Lead at Skyrise. And we also have Pate joining us from Clean Digital. She is the Senior Marketing Manager and Trustee Director. And she has very kindly jumped in last minute because we had Fraser Smith was meant to join us, but his wife has just given birth. And so he's on paternity leave because obviously Clean Digital is a great culture and he's able to do that. We were just having a chat earlier how things have changed in the last 20 years. So just to give you a quick intro, what we're looking to do today is to give you a bit of an overview of the fundamentals for a great company culture. We want to give you some ideas of how you can make inroads to deliberately build your company culture. We're going to hear some real stories from Sam and from Hannah about building your company culture that is unique to you and to your business. And we'll also have a bit of a gift at the end where you can do a self-assessment on your company culture that then suggests actions that you can take specifically to build your company's culture further. In case you are unfamiliar with Vimeo, you can find the interactive options to the right of your screen. The team behind the scenes, thank you, Sue, and thank you, James. They can see your comments and questions, and they will highlight the questions to us. So please feel free to, share your reflections, share your thoughts, and most importantly, share your questions throughout the webinar. We will have some time at the end where we will answer as many of those questions as we can. Okay. So to kick us off, we've got a little bit of a poll. We just wanted to kind of sense check, pulse check, where you are each at. So in your opinion, what best defines a positive company culture? So this is not about the company you're working in, but in an ideal world, what is the most important aspect of a positive company culture? And I'm going to ask you to choose one of those four. So either open and transparent communication, or opportunities for growth and development, or strong teamwork and collaboration, or respect and inclusivity. And I believe you are able to just pick on the poll, which I can't see, but I trust that that's working. If it isn't, let us know. And then once we have received all your input, James is going to share with us the outcome. So last few moments to cast your vote. James, do we have the votes come in? Are we able to see the results?
Hi all, just in from backstage here. So we have a tie for first. Transparent communication and respect and inclusivity are both 37%. Also, a couple of votes each for growth and development and teamwork and collaboration.
Okay, thank you, James. That's very interesting, particularly since when we look at it is the openness and the way we communicate transparently, but also our ability to be open to include everyone's voices. To me, it looks like also open and transparent communication is closely linked to respect and inclusivity, right? How do we make room and how do we ensure we have all voices heard? So really interesting, and thank you for your input. So let's jump into, company culture. What is it really? And if we were to look for a definition, and you can Google this or ChatGPT this or whatever, but it'll probably say something along the lines of that company culture are the shared values, the beliefs and behaviors and practices that kind of shape the environment and the atmosphere within an organization. So it really shapes how people interact. So, the fact that you have highlighted the communication and the inclusivity, it's a relationship, right? How we interact, how we make decisions, how we work together. And one of the most important things is that the way we work together is rooted in the company's vision and mission and the core principles or values, whatever you want to call them. So that alignment or cohesion between the way we work and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve is really the keystone of a great company culture. Um, if we have a lack of engagement, connection, and overwhelm, then that's some of the biggest issues that companies are facing nowadays. So if we look at some of the Gallup research lately and the Harvard Business Reviews, the disengagement and the lack of connections and the sheer volume of work, some of the biggest challenges we're facing. So a strong company culture really has the potential to counter that and to even make engagement and productivity, and that sense of community amongst people in the organization, one of the strongest assets of a company. We're going to go through sort of five fundamental elements of organizational culture. We call them culture building blocks. And the first one is purpose and values. So as mentioned in the definition, it becomes really important to be really clear about why are we together as an organization? Why are we doing what we're doing? And the values kind of shape how we're doing it. And what we want in a great company culture is that, the purpose and the values are co-created and embodied. So it means that a team would regularly kind of discuss and revisit its shared purpose and values to clarify and iterate the priorities of the projects, and also how to make decisions that are aligned. So to give you a really positive example, and I was trying to find big companies that we all know. A really positive example for great purpose and values is Patagonia. And they have a really strong commitment to environmental sustainability, which drives all of their business decisions from sourcing materials to their activism and ensuring their purpose and values are really integrated into their daily operations, into the way they work as a team, into the way they, communicate, make decisions, etc. In terms of the purpose and values, a red flag, we often call it a red flag when we, support organizations, is when we see values printed on posters or on the wall, which in itself is not a bad thing. But if they're printed there, but at the same time ignored when decisions are being made, or in performance conversations, and that's when really what happens is we get a lot of cynicism and disengagement in people. So we really want to see the purpose and values being lived and embodied through all those little interactions and ways of working. The second key element is really around leadership and communication, right? We're coming back to the element that you have highlighted yourself as one of the key points, the communication. So it's that clarity and consistency in the leadership style and in how leadership and the whole organization communicate with one another that really elevates this building block. So having high levels of transparency, for people to have the skills and create the conditions where there is deep listening, where dialogue can take place, and where people can be open and show up with all of the potential that they have is a key element of this. So what you would see is that leaders consistently model the transparency. They would share the context and they'll actively listen and are open about, what's going on in the organization, what they're hearing, but they also open about what they don't know, which, when you're in a leadership position, you often feel like you have to be the hero, the one that has the answer to everything. But in fact, being able to be transparent and go and, just putting your hand up and going, I don't actually know the answer to this. Let's find out together. That really builds the conditions for that openness, that communication, and that co-creation. So seeking the input for collaboration and contribution from everyone in the organization. So again, I was looking for a positive example, and Satya Nadella's leadership at Microsoft emphasizes transparency and active listening, and regularly sharing companies' updates and encouraging feedback, and also clarifying uncertainty to foster trust across teams. And in fact, I was speaking to a client yesterday who was the chief technical officer at Microsoft for many years and leading their transformation. And he was telling me about how Microsoft really focused on empathy as the key skill and key competency to create an environment of innovation and high performance, because I really recognize that without that, we can't actually move forwards, because we need to be able to connect with each other on that deeper level. So a red flag rule is when decisions are made behind closed doors, announced by email, and basically communicated, this is already done. Sometimes worse is if the organization tries to get your input on something that they have already decided on, because really, that's where, what's the point? It often creates disengagement again, confusion, distrust, because why are you asking if you've already decided? Okay, so the third building block is recognition and feedback. They are very much a part of our everyday work, and they should be part of our everyday work, and they shouldn't be left to just once or twice a year performance reviews. And we also want to see peer-to-peer feedback on collective learning reflection, right? So where actually the system as a whole, your team as a whole, is supporting each other to constantly grow and evolve through recognizing the achievements and the hard work everyone's putting in and giving the feedback. So in this sort of building block of creating a strong culture is looking to implement peer-to-peer recognition tools or practices and embed them into day-to-day work, and to really enable that real-time appreciation and feedback that's aligned with your team values, and really celebrating those efforts and progress, and not just the outcomes, but also the way we're working. So a positive example here is Zappos. They are actually a self-managed organization, and what they do is employees celebrate each other's efforts through a peer nomination platform. There's also another company, and I can't remember their name at the moment. It's a finance company, and they've even developed an app. They call it the Dot Collector, where basically you can give instant feedback to everyone in the organization just through the app. So the idea is to give that real-time recognition, not just for outcomes and for completing tasks, but for embodying the company's values. And that is what really boosts the morale and the team cohesion, because we're really, strengthening that connection that holds us together. A red flag is usually when feedback only happens during annual reviews and is only provided by the manager or leader. Or even worse, if the feedback only gets given when something goes wrong. So that really leaves people guessing, where do we stand? And you don't really know, what should I be carrying on? What am I good at? Etc. Okay, our next culture building block is belonging and inclusion, the other one that you guys have highlighted. So here, values are really what creates the alignment, and that's what enables our diversity, not just in who we are, in diversity in being, but also diversity in how we think. And in order to create that connection and that alignment, we have clear working agreements that really enable us to feel safe, psychologically safe, but obviously also physically safe if that is relevant in your organization. So you would see team rituals and practices that allow everyone to contribute and co-create the working environment, to be able to contribute to meetings, writing, and collaborating asynchronously in a way that works best for everyone to make their contribution to the organization's outcomes. A positive example is Buffer's team has a regular they have regular rituals like a bit like a happy hour or a show and tell, where everyone shares their thoughts or experiences, and working agreements about respectful communication are always co-created to really foster that inclusion. So, in terms of how we work together is not mandated from the top down, from the manager, but it is, created together in terms of how we're working together. Okay. And our last one is growth and development, our culture building block. So, for a great culture, we want to see learning and development to be owned and shaped by each individual and supported by the company. So it's not mandated by the company, your development track, but you can own it yourself, but you receive the support and the resource from the organizations. So individuals kind of co-create their learning and development plans with their managers and with their peers, and they are supported with the time and the resource to pursue those learning goals. So one positive example is one that we all know, Google, right? At Google, employees work with their managers and peers to craft those personalized learning plans. And they do get the dedicated time and resources allocated for skill development to really lead the continuous growth and engagement. They also have something called the Ideas Plus Lab. I don't know if you've heard about that. And this is where Google is trying to, be very innovative and come up with all these new ideas all the time. And the idea is that people just, any idea that they have, they just run with it. And in fact, what happens there is that you are being rewarded for the ideas and for building on other people's ideas. Not just rewarded when that idea succeeds, but you're still rewarded if that idea fails, because there's that recognition by all of those steps, we get to that success that we want. So in terms of a red flag rule, that's really if career development is treated as a one size fits all, and that often then leaves people stuck and burnt out trying to perform in that mold specifically without actually tapping into their unique gifts and their potential. Okay. So these are our 5 company culture building blocks. We're going to jump into our case studies with Sam and with Hannah in a moment. Before that, I've got a quick question for all of you, and I can see as a couple of questions have come in already. What would you say is one unspoken rule or tradition at your company that really defines or highlights the culture in your company? So just one unspoken rule or tradition. And what we're looking for is, the thing that everyone knows, everyone is clear about it, but if someone new comes in, they don't know. So just pop that in the chat because, again, I think there might be some real gems in there from all of you. And maybe I'll open it up to Hannah and to Sam. Maybe you can just briefly share what would be your unspoken rule or tradition that kind of encompasses your culture in just that. So we can already get a feel for it.
I'll go, Hannah, if that's all right. I'm thinking maybe connection and inclusion. Couldn't think of just one because culture's such that thing that you don't really know what it is, do you, if you're trying to think about it? But I think for us, connection and inclusion is massive at Skyrise. So yeah, 2.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd say for us, an unspoken rule is just sort of having that mutual respect. So kind of no matter your level in the company, you treat everybody, as people and listen. That's probably one for us. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, interesting. And it's interesting because when people come in from the outside, they don't know this foundational element of your culture, but often very quickly it becomes visible. We might not be able to put a word to it, but we can sense it when we walk into a company, into an organization, that fundamental pulse that's there. So we're going to jump into our case studies, and for our audience, whilst you're listening to both case studies, one from Hannah and one from Sam, I'd like you to really listen out for those culture building blocks that we've just covered, and how each of their companies have approached some of those building blocks. I mean, obviously we can't share everything, but you will hear aspects of it coming through as they share their story. Okay, so Hannah, are you happy to start?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Clean Digital, you guys, obviously you became a employee-owned agency,
Yeah.
and I'm just curious about what the changes have been in your company values, and because of becoming an employee-owned agency, but also how did you work on developing and living them?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's been lots of smaller changes, but I would say the core change is that we've become a lot more agile. So I've worked at Clean Digital for over 6.5 years now, actually. And during that time, I've seen a lot of transformation. I've seen lots of highs and lows, not to mention a global pandemic. But we'll keep it positive today. But obviously, that was a really big thing. And I've also had a kind of unique perspective on both sides of the coin, like before becoming employee owned and since becoming employee owned as well. And I'm also an elected trustee director, so I've also got that sort of view on how the whole thing operates as well. And in a nutshell, the kind of reason behind us becoming employee owned when we did was Rory, our managing director. He just wanted to create a fairer and more inclusive framework for the agency, and it seemed like the right time. Because prior to that, we had the more traditional agency structure with Rory as the managing director. And we did have a clear set of values during that time, which did evolve themselves over the years. But they ended up being be leaders, show passion, bring value, and be problem solvers. And these ran through absolutely everything we did back then, from day to day tasks to client interactions, and also, when it came to our appraisals and our sort of performance reviews, we had questions that were associated to each value to ensure we're all speaking to this. And then since becoming employee owned, we have become a lot more agile, as I mentioned. And so this was May 2023, so 2 years ago now, we became employee owned. And soon after, we ran a company-wide workshop where we kind of revisited our values. And it was great to have this platform for people to have a shared voice, because actually one of our newest members of team at the time suggested that maybe rather than be problem solvers, what maybe made more sense is to be curious, because it's not in our line of work. There's so many new developments when it comes to new channel creation, platform creation, and AI developments as well. So it's not enough to just be problem solvers. You've got to anticipate any issues that are going to come, and you've got to be looking ahead, going the extra mile, and also, just trying to find the best way to maximize our value to our clients and maximize their return on investment as well. So since then, we've become a lot more, we've touched base a lot more during our trustee meetings on just making sure our values still make sense in the evolving landscape. And we're actually got a new workshop coming up in a few weeks' time to revisit them. And then just also to ensure that all new team members are aware of our values and our purpose.
To also really bring them along the journey so that they also have a voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I love what you said there about, your example of someone actually saying, well, should we be problem solvers or should we be innovators? Because, looking at it, it really speaks to that alignment of your purpose and your vision, what you're doing as an organization, and that alignment to the values and directly translating to that. And when that, when that cohesion is there, it can start to work really, really well, because ultimately our values, whilst they are words, those are just words we use to express what is actually happening in the organization's collective behavior, right?
Yeah.
That's what kind of shapes the culture ultimately. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Really like that. And so how would you maybe describe the cultural shift? Because obviously it sounds like there's a lot that you already did beforehand in terms of, having alignment with the values, but now there's been perhaps more co-creation. But can you describe to us the kind of shift from where it was to where it is now, and maybe what's coming? I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, employee ownership kind of naturally invites more voices in the room, which is a strength, but also can slow down decision making if it's not managed properly. So we've had to, overcome quite a few challenges, especially initially 2 years ago. And one thing that springs to mind was, everybody is we're a small team, but within that, everybody's at a sort of different life stage. So when we were wanting to implement change via the employee ownership, we realized our priorities were completely different across the agency. So some of the team would prefer more sort of tangible perks, like bike to work schemes and coffee machines and things like that, whereas some people were thinking more futuristically for like maternity paternity policy enhancement and pension scheme enhancement, futuristic things. So finding our feet with that was tricky to begin with, but there's also just finding the new sort of the structure and what exactly is a trust issue and what is just an operational issue that would be made by senior management anyway, was really important. So like that really shifted the culture, just having all these new voices in the room. But ultimately, we're kind of in a good spot now. We're really actually proud of our progress we've made, and we've managed to because in these trustee meetings, the team is made up of lots of different personalities. There's introverts, there's extroverts, people willing to voice their opinion, people who are maybe a bit more shy. So we had to navigate that as well. And since then, we've come up with, we've got one-to-ones with the trustee directors to, people can comfortably raise opinions and maybe issues. And then we've got dedicated guidelines, Slack channels. We've even had external training from Baxendale, who were the company that helped us transition into employee ownership in the first place, which has been really useful. And then also just communicating that this new culture and a new framework to our client base was also a hurdle we had to overcome, because, you don't want to cause alarm, but this ultimately ended up being easier than we thought, because the way we saw it, it was completely mutually beneficial, with that higher level of buy-in from the team, which would, propel proactivity amongst the team. And then there's that also long-term continuity to drive the business forward and make sure our clients are doing well, which I guess is comforting for them. So culturally, it's just been finding our feet with the new framework, and then finally getting to a good spot now where it's an exciting time. We've got a good framework in place, and it's just a great that we have these platforms for people to speak.
Thank you, Hannah. It sounds amazing. And what I really like is how you touched on, you know, you use the words managing it properly when including all the voices. And what I often experience when supporting organizations, there can be a bit of a fear around, oh my God, if we open this up, whether you're moving to employee owned or whether you're just wanting to shift your culture to be, more co-creative, co-sensing. There can be that fear of, oh my God, if we have all these voices, this is going to be too much and it's going to be chaos. But what you've highlighted is those different practices and structures and having them in place that then create that order, and that also brings that awareness of the different priorities. Because as we go through life, our priorities shift. And if anyone's interested in it, you can read up on spiral dynamics, right? There's whole maps of how we evolve as individuals and how we evolve as societal and systems. And so that really, impacts then, what are the decisions we're going to make and what are we going to prioritize? So having those structures in place becomes so key. And it sounds like you've also been able to really include your client base in that journey, to really kind of, embed that in a much broader sense. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump over to Sam for now. If we have time, we can come back and there might be questions as well. Sam, so you're the sort of culture and transformation. You're in charge of all of that when it comes to Skyrise. And I'm just sort of curious about how would you describe the culture at Skyrise, and perhaps give us an idea on how you would describe it now, and maybe when you first took this on, what the difference is. What's the journey you guys have made?
Well, Skyrise has always had a fantastic culture, I think. They've always been a very nice environment to work in, good people. But I do think if we were going to describe the culture, it would be organic. So it's not fixed and it's always evolving. It's constant, but it's adaptive, I suppose you'd say. So how do I think now? I feel like we're in a good place with our psychological safety. I think people feel like they're heard and seen and valued at Skyrise. When I first joined, so it's similar to Hannah, I think it was about 6.5 years ago. I joined and it was really nice environment, but there was different pockets of people who spoke to each other. I didn't feel like it, as an outsider coming into the business, I didn't feel like when I walked into the office, everyone was chatting together, or there was almost that, there was lots of different connections, but there was missing that overall sort of glue, I'd say. So I just looked at who was speaking to who or who was interacting with who, and seeing if we could make pockets where people could interact together who wouldn't usually work together on a day-to-day basis. So we started creating like little things on a Wednesday, and the initiative, we called it Wellness Wednesday, and people used to come and have a chat about, maybe one day we'd do some lovely water, or we'd do a lunch or something like that, and it'd be really, really, really low cost, really easy things, but that would bring different people together. And then that sort of grew arms and legs and snowballed into this big, really good thing that we, just carried on the connection. So I do think for us, connection is the key at Skyrise for our culture. And also that it's not fixed. We can do different things. Some people can get involved in, say, book club. Other people can get involved in, we do school trips where we go for walks around the city or go to like an art exhibition. So it's about having things for everyone, because we know that not one size fits all, and it shouldn't have to. I think we're really trying to flex and adapt. So now as Skyrise, we're trying to flex and adapt. So we want to really prioritise culture add over culture fit. Whereas I think, say, 6 years ago, or certainly before the pandemic, it was very much culture fit. Who would they fit with Skyrise? Would they fit with the people? And now it's about, well, could these people add that we don't have? We don't want sameness. We want difference. We want new ideas. We want innovation. We want people who add different things. So obviously that means that our cultures had to adapt and be flexible with our people as well, which has been fantastic, I think. I think it's really grown. I mean, obviously there are times when there are challenges like the pandemic, and if the business pivots to something else, or the industry is going for a tough time at the minute. So if we have redundancies, it's about, our culture is all about learning from those things and trying to not just navigate them, but learning from them. And next time, if it ever happens, like, we can build on our culture and our people. And it's all about learning and carrying on, really.
I can really hear the sort of how, as an organization, you are sort of actively looking for those impulses that kind of make you evolve, and that kind of stretch you. When you're speaking about culture add rather than culture fed, etc., and looking at everything as an opportunity. Okay, so how do we now evolve as an organization? And what I love about that, the way that you describe it, it's very clear that this is not how do I as an individual grow through that, but it's a collective. It's like you as a system, how do we evolve because of this thing that's happening?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I'd say that our culture's co-created. So like, my people director sends out pull surveys. We send out lots of surveys and basically make space for people to tell us, come forward and tell us, be honest. What do you think's working? What's not working? What can we do better? So we are constantly asking, and we're always ears open for anything. And that's one of the things I think we're most proud of at Skyrise is we're quite radically open about. We have conversations about everything. Lots of topics you would think don't belong in the workplace. Well, they do at Skyrise. We can talk about anything, and it's fantastic. And it's not always been like that. We've really built on that openness and the trust between team members. We have an initiative called Coffee and Conversations, where we can talk about, just trying to think what we've spoken about recently, positive masculinity, which has been really, really quite emotive for a lot of team members. We talk about the menopause, perimenopause, how it affects people, and not just aim the conversations at the people who it may be physically affecting, but the people who live with those people or manage those people. So it's really it's important for us to keep talking about these things. And it's co-created by us, the culture. I would say another massive thing I'm so proud of is that Skyrise sees health as a whole, so physical and mental health. If you broke your leg, you'd be off work, like, you'd have sick pay, not a problem. But people may feel like they won't be able to take time off in other companies if they had a mental ill health issue. And we don't see it like that at Skyrise. We're really, if you're not well, please tell us, or take time off. I think what I'm trying to get across is that the openness is massive, and we're committed to everyone feeling included, and that we want our people to thrive. So whatever they need, that is what we're here for. And we're not just talking about the perks, this whole, if you've got a darts board in your office, it's a great culture. Like, we all know that is, one, red flag. Well, unless you love darts, but massive red flag. But also it's about the real details that matter. Do you feel safe going to work? Do you feel safe having a difference of opinion with your manager or someone who you work with? Do you feel safe to say, actually, I'm not okay at the minute, I'm not at my best, and I need some help, or I need to take some time? It's all of these things that we do at Skyrise, which I think our culture is brilliant for.
Mm. And Sam, I'm gonna just dig a little bit deeper there because often, I come across organizations where sometimes there's a little bit of hesitation of going, oh, when we have, you know should we be having these sort of conversations, and am I going to open a can of worms, and oh God, and what's going to happen, and is it going to become a therapy session? And so so I'm just curious, when you started and when you moved into that, broader openness, and really through that openness is where we develop the trust, because we're really connecting to each other. But were they voices in the organization that perhaps were concerned, hesitant? Completely understandable. But if there were, how did you approach that, and how did you find a way forward?
Yeah, well, I think, I'd be lying to say that there weren't. Yeah, should we be talking about this? I just want to say that also all the cultural initiatives that we do for wellness and health are optional to attend. So everyone will know they're going on and they're invited to these conversations, but you don't have to attend if you don't want to. And yeah, there was some chat and murmurs at the start saying, should we be talking about this? And absolutely, because it affects work and life are intertwined. And if something's affecting you at home, then it's certainly going to be affecting your performance at work. So there is, so actually speaking to senior leaders to try and get their buy-in, you do have to talk about what's in it for the business almost, which we shouldn't have to talk about that, and we know that, but being real, we do. So the whole point of having a conversation about menopause awareness, the business outcome will be that people take less time off, or are honest about the time off they're taking, or the help that they need. And if people feel like they don't have to mask at work, then they do better work. So production will go up as well, retention, attrition, all these things. So I did have to sort of change how I looked at things and how I presented things slightly to make sure that there was a business outcome, because at the end of the day, we are a business. Like you say, it's not a therapy session, but everything that we do at Skyrise is to basically so people can do their best work and thrive, which is great for the business. So yeah, it is hard sometimes, but I'm sure every company has this. It's just how you have to think of how to explain it to senior leaders to get their
Yes.
buy-in.
Yeah, and I think Hannah was touching on it as well, in terms of, there are obstacles. It's not smooth sailing building your culture, and it's that persistence and commitment to keep working on it. And also I think there is a huge element there around, the language we use, because if you're already on board, and chances are that everyone here today in the webinar already is on board in terms of why this is important, but we have loads of people in organizations who are not on board yet, not for any other reason than, our organizational systems have been, they still from the Industrial Revolution, where that element wasn't really talked about or considered, and we now need to, really bring that to the fore. And sometimes it's connecting the dots of how does this relate and impact everything else that we care about as an organization, whether it's profit, whether it's, doing good in the world, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I resonate with what you're saying there, but sometimes you feel like I shouldn't have to, but no, we do, because we need to find that, find a place where we can come together and connect to one another and have those real conversations about why we're doing it the way we're doing it. I want to jump in.
Culture is how you future-proof your business. It's just really simple. If you're not moving like along with the other companies and getting on board with, say, diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging initiatives, if you don't have a menopause policy, if you don't have an up-to-date parental leave and parental support policy, then your team will leave for someone who does. So it is all about future-proofing your business as well. Happy team is a more productive team.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and you know, we live in a world that is highly complex and uncertain and quite volatile, and so to operate on the basis of, you know, one hero leader that calls all the shots, it's actually too big a burden for one hero leader, and we can do so much better if we all, you know, play our part. And for that, we need to create the conditions for everyone to play their part and contribute. So I think, you know, overall we're shifting away from seeing organizations as kind of machines, everyone being a cog in the machine or a, you know, a wheel or a screw, to we're actually ecosystems that grow and evolve together. I want to jump into sort of the practical quick wins and kind of ask both of you around, you know, what would be one initiative or one thing that you know, you've done or you're about to do perhaps, that is kind of low cost and high impact? Because sometimes, you know, working on the culture, there can be an element of, well, you know, resource wise, is there a threshold? Can we stretch? Can we do this? But actually there's so many things that we can do without huge budgets, and I just wanted to see what your, you know, what your suggestions, what your advice would be around that for our audience.
Will I go first?
Go on.
Yeah. So for us, like a sort of quick win that it costs nothing, would be to listen and adapt. So whether that's having regular check-ins with, like, I think communication is key with all of this. And if you're having regular check-ins, whether that's in a social sense or if it's in a more a work environment, your output, then you'll realize that great ideas can stem from all levels of the agency or the company, regardless of their experience level. And so if you're creating that dialogue, then and you're able to listen and adapt, then you can go miles with that. You know, it's just something we've always said is just listen, adapt, but never assume.
I love that. Listen, adapt, never assume. Yeah, because this moment we assume, we fall into our old traps.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, it's important to be moving forward. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. What about you?
No, I love that, Hannah. Yeah, listening and communication is key for us as well. If you're talking about quick wins that you could do in your team, we have shout outs every Friday where the team sends in shout outs, and it's just thanks for, like, someone will have worked on like a certain project, or will have done some great work on something, or will have picked something up or supported someone, or it could be just be like, thanks, you've brightened my day. And they cost nothing, and they just really give, honestly, the joy. I just love reading them, but when I send them out to everyone and everyone reads their shout outs on a Friday, they're fantastic. It just really picks everyone up. Other things, like we do have that really, really low budget, like cost no budget at all, really, book club, which is fantastic. Just everyone comes along, you decide on a book, you read it, you come back, we probably buy you a coffee and we have a nice little chat about the book. And that has been a really, really good initiative that we've run, because you can see the people who don't normally speak to people because they don't work with them are like having a disagreement about a book with, say, someone like junior and someone senior, and the fact that they're having this interaction is fantastic, and it really sort of breaks down a lot of barriers in business and builds confidence. So there are some quick wins.
Lovely. Yeah, great. I like that. Yeah, sometimes it's thinking about some of the initiatives we do and how do we, you know, make them work across the different layers of the organization. Yeah, I think one of mine would be team agreements. You know, coming together as a team and really, you know, defining what are the behaviors that you want and which are the ones that you're not having, that you're not okay with, because then you also make it very clear that as a team you can call each other out on it, you know, when you're showing up in a way that's not okay, that you've agreed. And you can combine that with confirmation practices, and also with other teams. How do we want to work together with each other, especially if you're working in cross-team collaboration. Okay. So I think we've got a number of questions that have come in, and hopefully I won't miss any of them. So again, this will go to you, Sam, and Hannah, and I'll chip in as I can. So I think the first question that came in was, what would you suggest when a HR process requires confidentiality and cannot be shared wider with the full team? How can this be managed with the company? So it sounds like there is a sort of a confidential element within HR, but the wider company, I presume also maybe senior level, might not be able to know. What do we think, or do we need some clarification on this one?
I suppose, yeah, it depends what it is. I mean, if it was something that there's been a complaint or a grievance that's been raised that you can't obviously go into the specifics, you could do some, offer the team some wider awareness and training around that subject. So you don't necessarily know, you're not telling people what it is, but you're thinking, actually, if that's come up, then we need to up our game here. We need to share awareness, maybe have a discussion of, like, it could be a coffee and conversation subject. We need to almost, have a chat about it without having a chat about it in the specifics. But yeah, I'm not too sure what that would be about. But
yeah, just like a refresher on, maybe policies that were already in place, but just sort of, reminding people of them without being so direct. And I guess it all comes from trust as well. Like if you're telling someone something, the discretion is there, but then it's managed accordingly.
Yes, yeah. And I think also there's an element there where when some of those issues arise is looking below the symptom, because often the issue is the symptom. And what is it the symptom of? Is it a lack of trust? Is it, a lack of psychological safety? Whatever it might be, and then you can address the deeper level root cause without having to divulge anything around what's going on in that particular situation. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me go to the next question. Do you have any tips on how to improve communication within a small team when leadership is extremely busy and distant? Okay. What do we think?
I would say that a strong culture stems from strong leadership, and it's a tricky one if leadership, as you say, is extremely distant and busy, because it's all about about communication and having that dialogue. So it really, if it comes from a strong leader who wants to create that inclusive, open environment, then obviously that's a lot easier. To go from the junior levels up, I guess it's having a frank conversation, and suggesting that you have more, maybe more company-wide updates and decisions, just increasing transparency. But that's a tricky one, I would say.
yeah, I'd say, I mean, if your leadership is distant and busy, then that's one thing that needs addressing straight away. We need to get the leader in the room. We need to have discussions with the team about ways of communication being better. Different people have got different communication styles. So what some the leadership style might be different to what the team require. So then again, it's about trying to bridge that gap and make sure everyone feels listened to and is listened to, and then act.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you there. I think there is obviously a potential risk there that the leader might be working in the business too much and not enough on the business. So that's probably something to address. But the other thing, because I come across something like this, if it is the same thing fairly regularly, where you as a team, you're kind of there waiting for the leader to give you direction and to communicate with you what's happening, where you're going, what's meant to happen. And sometimes that's lacking, particularly because the leader is working in the business rather than on it. And one way to move forwards is, first of all, stating what you need as a team in order to do your job. But often with that, what holds people back is that power dynamic, right? We're sort of, we're conditioned to look to our leader and wait. And that kind of puts us into that passive waiting position. So it's finding a way of coming out of that and stepping into agency and going, okay, so if we don't have the direction, what do we think the direction should be? Because you become an active partner to the leader and going, well, so from what we can see, this is what we need to do. This is where we should head. That's how we're going to do it. And so you open those channels of communications rather than waiting for them to happen, because quite often it's a blind spot and it's done unintentionally. So hopefully that helped. If any of the questions aren't answered and you have more and you need more, please put it in the chat and let us know. So next question, could you make a suggestion of activities that you carry out to drill down on your company values? Any ideas?
So I mentioned earlier that we run workshops now to revisit our values every so often. And during those workshops, what we do is we split up into groups, and it's almost like you take the values and you discuss them and discuss any suggestions for improvement or changes. But also during that time, we also try and get everybody to write a sort of look at our positioning and our messaging in general as an agency and see how they, work around our values as well. And that's always quite fun to see what the team then come back and present, like maybe even a short elevator pitch for Clean Digital and what it is. And that's always quite fun because it's interactive. And even if the values aren't changed at the end of it, at least they're front of mind. And we're all practicing what we preach.
Nice. What about you, Sam?
No, I agree. We have an away day where the values are discussed sort of by everyone, and it's masses of flip charts, pieces of paper, post-it notes flying around, loads of that, and just trying to get people, because it's hard, isn't it? Because when you sort of say, because if you don't have them on your wall, like at Skyrise, we don't have our values on the wall. Ours are real, connected and creators. And if you sort of asked anyone in our team to reel them off straight away, they'd be like, oh, hang on a minute. But actually, if you ask them to describe the culture at Skyrise, they would be the values that would come out of it. So it is hard if you don't have them written on the wall. And I don't think they should be written on a wall or on a poster anywhere, because that sort of defeats the object. But just getting the team to describe what they think the culture is and how they think it could pivot or be enhanced. And I think that's when, if you all get your heads together, that's when the values will come to life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's connecting the values to the actual behaviors, or vice versa, right? So that it becomes a lived element. One thing that I would highlight, in terms of when you do workshops or when you engage with your people around your values and the behaviors and what that looks like, and defining the meaning of those values, is also looking at what are our personal values and how do our personal values align to the organization's values, and behind that really also connecting to the why, the organizational purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, and why am I showing up to work every day, what's driving me. So those four elements, connecting them to find interconnection, even though our personal values don't have to perfectly mirror the company values, but we need to find some sort of connection to it that is rooted in our why, and that way they really come alive quite strongly. So hopefully that was helpful. Final elements. So just before we round up, we're just over the hour, so apologies for that. It's because we're having so much fun talking about this. We have a post-webinar resource. So there's a culture scorecard. I'm going to put the link in the chat now. Hopefully that works. If not, then I'm sure James or Sue will put it in. This is a scorecard where basically you can do a self-assessment on your organizational culture, and then it gives you feedback on those different components, the 5 building blocks of the culture, and what are some ideas that you can implement to improve your culture specific to your organization. So hopefully that resource will be useful. Any final thoughts from you, Sam or Hannah, before we close off?
Sorry, Hannah, go on.
No, you go for it.
When you just said making sure that you know the why, I think that is probably, if you take anything away from today, it's like, find out the why. What is your why in everything you do really at work? I think it's really important. Like, why are we putting this meeting in? Why are we doing this? What is the business outcome of this? What is the outcome for our people? So the why is literally the most important thing you can ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like about that finding that shared purpose, like what gets you up in the morning, what you're actually there to do, and making sure that is, across the whole company wide, and like even just futuristically thinking when it comes to recruitment, you really have to make sure that like people, are culturally the right fit. Like, experience can only go so far. You need to make sure that they're going to fit your ethos and your values, and I think that is just as important as experience.
Thank you, Hannah. From me, I think whatever you've taken from this webinar, whatever insight, whatever idea, take it, apply it in the next 7 days, because otherwise it's going to go. And just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start with something, and from there iterate and build, and it will just build momentum and grow. And you might realize that actually, when you really look at your culture, there's already so much that you are doing that you unless we look at it, we don't realize. So just make a start and build on from where you're at the moment. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been great. Hopefully it's been valuable and useful. And of course, feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any more specific questions. Sorry, Sam and Hannah, I didn't check, but I've just volunteered you for that. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. And we look forward to perhaps hear what you have implemented and taken forward. So thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.